Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. In this guide, we'll be going over the 8 pro tips to give you godlike aim with the Vandal. The Vandal is one of those rifles where pro players absolutely demolish on, but for the average player, they can really struggle with. The good news is this is completely fixable. You don't just need natural talent or some insane aim or accuracy to make the Vandal work. And that's what we'll be breaking down in this guide, tips that you can actually incorporate into your game to start clicking heads with the Vandal and top fragging. Now, for our question of the day, do you think that Valorant should add a third rifle to the game? For example, something like an AUG. Or do you think that just having the Phantom and Vandal is all that is needed for this weapon type? If you do think they should add a third rifle, what do you think it should be like? And if you're against adding a third rifle, what would you add instead? Let us know in the comment section below, as we'd love to hear your thoughts. Alright, so jumping into our first tip with the Vandal, first things first, you need to understand the pros and cons of the Vandal, and that begins by understanding its stats when compared to the Phantom. One of the core strengths of the Vandal is that it has no damage drop-off, doing the same damage at all ranges. Compare this to the Phantom that starts doing less damage past 15 meters, at which point it no longer one-shot headshots. However, to compensate for this strength, the Vandal has a lower fire rate than the Phantom at 9.75 rounds a second. This is lowered to 8.775 when aiming down sights. Yeah, that's right, for those of you who don't know, aiming down sights does reduce your fire rate. So I'm sure many of you are thinking the same thing. It's great seeing these numbers, but with the different fire rates, damage drop-offs at different ranges, and damage values to different body parts, how in the world are you supposed to know which weapon does more damage or is stronger? Well, this is where a value that's known as time to kill comes into play. Time to kill, or TTK for short, is the gold standard when it comes to evaluating the strength of a weapon in an FPS game. This is because it represents the time it will take you to kill an enemy. So the lower the time, the stronger the weapon, as you're killing opponents faster. And that's why we went the extra mile to calculate the time to kill for both the Vandal and the Phantom. So here's what you'll notice. For headshots for the Vandal, at all ranges, it's 0 seconds. This is just because it's a one-shot headshot. For the Phantom, it's also 0 seconds. It's a one-shot headshot within 15 meters, then becomes 0.09 at 15 to 30 and 30 to 50. Okay, so what this means is that in terms of headshots, both guns are equal at under 15 meters, but past that, the Vandal is better with a lower time to kill. Now, for body shots, you can see the Vandal's TTK is 0.31 seconds at all ranges, whereas the Phantom is 0.27 seconds at 15 meters, so faster and better than the Vandal, but then jumps to 0.36 seconds past 15 meters, so slower and worse. Essentially, all you need to know is that 15 meters and below, the Phantom is just objectively better than the Vandal. However, past 15 meters, the Vandal has the lower time to kill overall. This means you need to memorize that 15 meter mark. If you're 15 meters or closer, you're going to be at a disadvantage against Phantom users, so you want to look to play angles and positions that put you at 15 meters or further in your games. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes you are forced into close range fights, but you should be aware of this general rule and trying to follow it as you play. And before we continue with our second Vandal tip, remember what you find here on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement system on our website, SkillCapped.com. It's there, you'll not only find over 700 premium Valorant guides, but we also have an expanding library of live Smurf commentaries, a feature no one else offers. These are by some of the top Valorant players, breaking down how you too can climb out of every rank in Valorant, ranging from Iron to Diamond. All of this can be unlocked with no risk with our rank improvement guarantee, so click the link in the description below, head to SkillCapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so if we look at the stats, the Vandal is kind of looking like it might just be better overall, but numbers are not everything. In practice, the Vandal actually has a more difficult to control recoil and bullet spread. Let me show you what I mean. Here, I'm at around 20 meters away from the wall, a good solid range you'll likely be using with the Vandal. First, let's spray the first 9 bullets of the Vandal with no attempts at controlling the recoil. Next, let's spray the first 9 bullets of the Phantom, again, not controlling the recoil. What we see is that the Vandal kicks up significantly higher, but this is only the first part. After 9 bullets is when your rifle begins to sway left and right. So now let's fully spray the Vandal to see its left and right sway recoil. Now, let's do the exact same for the Phantom. You'll notice that the Phantom has a much tighter spread when it's swaying left to right. Essentially, it doesn't vary as much up and down or left to right. Compare this to the Vandal, which has a lot more variance and a wider circle that the bullets can land within. So this is very important to understand, and what pros mean when they say the Vandal is harder to control. Your first 9 bullets will have a bit more variance to them, as there are larger gaps between them as it kicks up more and more. However, you can learn to pull down the correct amount to control that first 9 bullet spray, and with a little luck, you can be alright. But it's past those first 9 bullets when the Vandal starts to sway left and right, it becomes nearly impossible to control accurately, and you're heavily reliant on the RNG gods. Now, this isn't the whole story though. Pay attention to the first 3 bullets that we shoot with the Vandal. Notice how they're almost perfectly accurate. This is why pros often shoot the Vandal in bursts of 2 to 3 bullets, as those first 3 bullets are super accurate and the true recoil doesn't kick in until the 4th bullet. Also, a high-level tip that I never see anyone mention is that there's a subtle amount of recoil in your 3-bullet burst that you can actually control with the Vandal. So here, I'm shooting without controlling my recoil at all, just doing 3-bullet bursts. Now I'll do a very slight pull down as I shoot my 3 bullets, and you'll see that it actually makes those 3 bullets consistently more accurate. Alright, so what does all this mean? Well, you pretty much never want to spray past the 9th bullet with the Vandal due to its extreme recoil sway. Now you can just pull down and look to spray the first 9 bullets, but you have to be relatively close. I would say no more than 20 meters at the furthest to do this kind of spray. The majority of the time instead, you'll be doing a 3 bullet burst with a very subtle pull down or just 1 tapping. Fantastic, so you now understand the core mechanics of the Vandal and its strength and weaknesses, so now we can get into the optimal playstyle of the weapon. The Vandal's playstyle is much different than the Phantom. This is because you really want to avoid spraying, but that can be hard to do in Valorant, as if you're caught out in the open and tagged by a bullet, your movement speed will be slowed down to a crawl and you'll be a sitting duck. An easy way to wrap your head around the way you should be playing with the Vandal is to pretend that you're actually using an operator. If you were using an operator, you would never just run around out in the open. Instead, you would hold tighter angles, looking to take a shot and then quickly get to cover. This is exactly how you want to be playing with the Vandal, looking to play those tight angles where you can get your quick 3 burst off at head level and then move behind protection. Obviously though, the Vandal isn't the operator and is a bit more versatile and aggressive. So for example, if you are pushing an angle with the Vandal, you'd want to clear each angle one by one, which is called slicing the pie. We have guides on this, and jiggle peek these angles. It's really clean and precise movement is what you're going for. If instead you're the one holding the angle with the Vandal, well then you'll again be very similar to an operator, holding a relatively tight angle at headshot level, looking for that quick 1-shot headshot with a 3-shot burst into then ducking behind cover. Let's compare this playstyle to someone using the Phantom. With the Phantom, you can swing much more aggressively into angles than as soon as you make contact with an enemy, crouch and spray. Essentially, the Phantom will be a bit more forgiving, since if you ever find yourself out in the open or just in an unexpected gunfight, you can always fall back to holding that crouch button and trying to quickly spray down the enemy. And so if you're looking to master the Vandal, always keep in mind that if you're watching other riflers who actually use the Phantom, you can't always replicate that way that they're playing. That's why I highly recommend you check out Tens, as he's widely considered the best Vandal aimer in the game right now, and look to study how he uses the Vandal. Now, you're probably thinking, well, if I can't crouch and spray, what in the world am I supposed to do? Well, with a Vandal, you'll have to master a technique known as strafe shooting or counter strafing. We have several guides breaking down exactly how to do this mechanic, so if you don't know how, I highly recommend you check them out. But to give you a quick summary, strafe shooting is when you move in one direction. Let's say you're holding A to move left, then you let go of A and hit D to move right. Well, there is a moment right after I let go of A and I hit D as I change directions that I'm actually standing still. It's in this small moment that I can fire a burst of bullets perfectly accurate. Since with the Vandal, we rarely want to spray and are typically looking to 1-tap or 3-shot burst, strafe shooting and counter strafing become a core mechanic to master. For example, you can use this mechanic to jiggle peek angles to get quick shots off into then returning to cover. Or if you're fighting out in the open at long ranges, you can use it to move between your bursts of bullets to allow your accuracy to reset while being difficult to hit. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean in every single situation you just strafe shoot back and forth. Instead, as a general rule, you want to master this mechanic of strafe shooting and counter strafing for peeking around corners the majority of the time. And then I would say at around 30 meters or higher, that's when you always want to start strafe shooting if you're caught out in the open instead of just crouching down and spraying. As you start getting below that range, specifically 20 meters or lower, if you're caught out in the open then, your best chance at winning a fight will still be to crouch and pull down, looking to control those first 9 bullets of your recoil. This is because as long as you land 1 of those bullets to the head or 4 to the body, you will kill the opponent, and that's completely doable under 20 meters. It's really that 20 to 30 meter range. It's a bit of a gray area where you're probably still better off spraying if you're caught out in the open, just due to a Phantom user likely spraying you down in like 0.36 seconds before you can even move and let your accuracy reset, but you'll need some luck in your spray to kill them between that 20 to 30 meter range. Basically, getting caught out in the open past 30 meters isn't the worst thing in the world with the Vandal, since you have no damage drop off and you can start strafe shooting. Neither is under 20 meters, since you can just crouch and spray fairly accurately, but it's between 20 and 30 meters that you're in a very awkward spot and you instead would prefer to be jiggle peeking around cover instead of being locked into a fight to the death out in the open. Alright, so at this point you should have a clear picture of just how valuable the Vandal is at long ranges, and I want to dive deeper into exactly how this impacts how you actually play in a real game. First, let's talk about the positions you should be looking to play, and let's use Haven as an example. So you want to look to play positions of the map where you have long sightlines. For example, on defense, holding C long can be really strong, as it's one of the longest sightlines in the game at 50 meters or higher. What you want to avoid is playing positions like inside garage, where at the absolute maximum, you're getting, 35 meter gunfights outside of garage, while the majority of the time you're taking fights under 15 meters inside garage. It's the same idea if you're playing A site. You want to look to hold that long sightline on A long that's around 40 meters, where Phantom users will be receiving their maximum damage drop off. What you want to avoid is playing a position like sewers, where at best you're getting a 20-meter fight, but usually much closer under 15 meters if the enemies push you. You also want to consider how this impacts how you fall back and play inside the site itself. For example, if you're holding A long and miss your shots or get a kill, well, you want to fall to all the way to the back of hell to play this long sightline on A long. Or you can just completely retreat out of sight to reposition at A heaven, again going for those longer ranges. What you'd want to avoid is playing close spots in sight, like behind boxes or in the cubby, where Phantom users are going to have that time to kill advantage. And speaking of long ranges, this is a good moment to quickly touch on when you should be aiming down sights. This is one of the most common questions players have. What range should I actually aim down my sights, or should I just not aim down my sights at all? Well, you have to remember aiming down sights causes three things. First, it reduces your fire rate, so that's going to increase your time to kill, which is a bad thing. It also changes how your recoil works, which basically just ends up making it impossible to control past the third bullet. Again, that's a bad thing. And if all of this wasn't enough, it also lowers your movement speed by 24%. So suddenly that strafe shooting mechanic doesn't become a great option. The only benefit is that you get a 1.25 times zoom. Other than that, your fire rate is lowered, and you're better off playing these slots in Vegas than trying to spray scoped in. And for this reason, the majority of the pros try to avoid aiming down sights with the rifles the vast majority of the time. However, there are situations where that zoom can help you see the enemy and actually land your shots, making you more accurate. Keep in mind, this is somewhat going to be player preference based on how good your eyesight is, but a really good rule to follow is to only allow yourself to scope in at 40 meters or longer. Anything below 40 meters, you really should never have to scope in to help you land your shots. However, beyond 40 meters, enemies can become quite difficult to see, especially their head, which is what you're aiming for. In fact, a good way to think about it is to scope in if you're playing a spot where typically you'd play an operator. So if we go back to Haven, if I'm playing all the way back in C sight and holding an angle on C long, well, that's like 50 meters and it's going to be extremely hard to actually see an enemy's head. So you want to scope in at this range. Make that target that's going to peek the corner bigger, take your 1 or 2 shots, and then dip back to cover as if you took an operator shot. Basically, if you're aiming down sights, you want to think of yourself in operator mode, where you're looking to land that one-shot headshot from super far range into then ducking behind cover. And to finish off this guide, I want to cover the 2 most common mistakes players make with the Vandal. The first mistake is not letting their accuracy reset between bursts. So as you know now, the majority of the time we're using the Vandal, we'll be looking to shoot either in 1 taps or in 3 bullet bursts. Well, you'll need to master the ability to recognize when your accuracy has actually reset after you fire the burst of bullets, so you know when to fire your next one. To understand this mechanic, check this clip out. Notice where my crosshair is currently placed. Now I'm going to fire 9 bullets and watch my crosshair closely. Notice how it jumps up, and then once I finish firing, it slowly returns to its original location. It's when your crosshair returns to its original location do you have perfect accuracy once again. The longer you spray, the longer it takes the Vandal to become fully accurate again. For example, notice when I shoot a 3 bullet burst, my crosshair returns to its original location extremely fast. And if I shoot a 1 bullet burst, it returns to fully accurate even faster. You want to head into practice mode and experiment with this and get a feel for how long it takes your accuracy to reset based on how many bullets you shoot. This is one of the biggest problems players have when using the Vandal. They don't wait long enough for the Vandal accuracy to reset, or they wait too long and just become a sitting duck. You want to get the timing down at 1 bullet shots, 3 bullet bursts, and 9 bullet sprays, as these are what you'll be using the most. Once you get this accuracy reset timing down, you'll not only become more accurate, but it will make your strafe shooting and peeking way cleaner and faster. And finally, the last mistake I see so many Vandal players make is spraying through smoke. You need to understand that the Phantom has a silencer on it, and so that means it doesn't show tracers to the enemies. However, the Vandal does not have that, and so when you fire through smoke, the enemy can actually see your bullet tracers and where those bullets are coming from. This will make it very easy for them to just spray back at that location and kill you. Now, this does not mean you can't shoot through smokes at all with the Vandal, but it just means you need to shoot in small bursts and then change your position. This way, when the enemy fires back at your tracer location, you won't be standing there anymore. In general though, just be cautious when shooting through smoke with the Vandal. I would highly recommend just avoiding spraying through it, and instead, if you do want to shoot through smoke, do it in bursts and move your position between each burst. And remember, if you want to improve, win more gunfights, and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Alright, so what do you think you struggle with the most with the Vandal? Let us know in the comment section below as we read all the comments and may just create a guide on that topic. And while you're down there, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides just like this one, with one goal in mind: helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.